Hey everyone, it's Classic DM. Let's talk about World War II. Oh man, I love World War II. When I was a little kid, I used to have so many Tamiya tank models. I had these 132 or 135 scale airfix soldiers for Germans and Americans and Japanese and British soldiers in North Africa and all kinds of stuff. And oh my god, we used to blow so much stuff up. It was so fun. Love playing war games. Panzer Leader, Squad Leader, Waterloo. And we weren't really all that smart. We were like 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. But boy, when we got into D&D, we're like, ah, man, there's really no, role-playing games that are cool and fun like D&D, but that have the kind of streamlined rules that you want to have in a role-playing game like D&D. So I was like, the other day I was digging through a bunch of my books. I'm like, oh, good lord, look how many cool World War II books I still have. I still got a bunch of old magazines. I have a bunch of Warlord miniatures I never put together. I was like, you know what? I was just doing this episode recently about movement reimagined, I think is what we called it. And that idea came from thinking about how movement's handled in a lot of the D&D games. And I was like, you know what? I should just design our World War II RPG and just document the whole thing step by step. So that's what this episode is going to be about. This is the first episode of, potentially, if I ever finish it, a World War II RPG in the spirit of Dungeons and Dragons, but it's going to capture some interesting things. It's going to capture the vibe. We're going to use the same kind of conventions that we've done in the past. We're going to have our 1-inch grid. So we're not going to be doing the Warlord thing or the Warhammer 40K thing. We're like, oh, dude, man, it's 5 inches away, man. And we're not going to do any of that. We're going to use a grid. These miniatures here are all by Warlord. Any that you see in the backdrop picture there, any miniatures that are the 28 millimeter will work just fine. Here's another angle. These are some guys I just put together the other day. Used my little base system that I use with the felt bottoms on it. And we have a new board. This is a brand new board. This is plexiglass. Yay. See how bouncy it is? Isn't that amazing? I built 4 brand new boards. And the reason for that is so I can piece together huge freaking World War II epic battlefields just like in Squad Leader. Because the moment you have projectile combat, you're going to need to shoot a lot further than this 18 by 20 map. So imagine one of these post-it notes is one of these. That's not a real dog, by the way. That's an ambient soundtrack in the background. The Sword Coast soundscapes for the win. So imagine this is this piece you're looking at right here, and we'll be able to have a second map here, and then a third map, and a fourth map, and we can turn them this way and make all kinds of cool combinations. So the idea is to kind of capture that variable map layout that was in Squad Leader, okay, and get rid of the hex grid, get rid of the counters, use miniatures, use percentile dice like in Boot Hill and in Top Secret and Space Opera, throw away all the rules about psionics and radiation and get rid of all the crazy skills and mustering out and all that kind of business, and let players in small groups, not necessarily units. You know, in a lot of war games you have these, everything's about a unit. You know, you have so many guys in an NCO and they take damage and the units get killed. And what's really fun to me is the combat where a player is controlling multiple characters simultaneously. For example, in this little vignette right here, we've got this German guy here. They're unpainted. I'll paint them eventually. Got this German guy shooting out the window of the submachine gun at this MP40 at these other dudes. There's a couple British soldiers across the street. Got a guy with a sniper rifle, a bunch of gear on. He's actually got a little mortar in his back. A dude peeking around the corner. Guy rushing across the street. Guy with a Bren gun coming across the street. Guy with a Sten gun about to kick in the front door. This guy's screwed, unless there's more Germans in the building, right? So, you know, A Bridge Too Far, Guns of Navarone, Where Eagles Dare, all those 70s movies. Let's capture. Those movies weren't about big units. We're not trying to simulate Operation Typhoon, you know, if you know what that is. So we're not going to try to simulate this. This is something a lot of war gamers do, and I think it's really cool. They really love it, especially these guys from Decision Games. They will go through and they will lay out an actual huge, massive historic battle, right? These are people who are real history buffs, and they know everything about World War II because it's one of the most grandest, epic, most devastating conflicts of the 21st century. We don't want to do that. There's plenty of war games. Why would I want to make a war game? I'm not good at making war games. My knowledge of World War II is from a few college level courses, and my passion for it ever since I was a little kid, make a model. So it's kind of like D&D. My passion for D&D, I don't know all the rules of D&D. I like the history. I like to capture the drama of what it's like to play in a fantastical setting. Who doesn't like, cool aircraft and cool tanks and all these kinds of things you see in these books as a little kid, right? Like, oh wow, these tanks are amazing. What would it be like to play a game that's kind of at that scale? So what would be the situation? Well, we're going to talk about movement here, and before we get into that, let's just clear this side panel out here, and let's pull up this other player panel, and we'll just put the dog on mute. I'm going to turn the dog off. Okay, no more dog. So we got this windy evening, and we got some rules on the right-hand side. So in every war game, there's movement, and in D&D there's movement. And you may have seen the other day and let's just clear these guys out of the way for a minute. Let's talk about what kind of movement human beings can do in combat, because there's kind of a definition of this stuff. Let's put the German guy here in the middle here. So right off the top, so there's two types of movement depending upon whether it's a normal 6-second round or what I'm calling an under fire round. And this is something that hadn't really been done in war games, in RPGs. War games have turns, have lots of phases and things like that. What I'd like to do is actually have two conditions. Let's say you're moving down the street by yourself, no problem. Are you moving down the street and this British soldier pops around the corner, you see him, you see you, and you're going to roll initiative and you start fighting. So you start shooting your machine gun at him, and he shoots a shot with his rifle, backs around the corner, redoes his infield and bolt action on it, and while that's happening, the time scale for you two guys compresses from 6 seconds of trotting down the street. Every 6 seconds, how far can you go? What can you do? And in 6 seconds, can you come up to the door, jostle the handle, and then kick it in with your foot and go in the building and take 3 steps? Versus, I'm shooting at you, you're shooting at me, and I'm going to take a pot shot at you and zip back behind cover. So that's 2 time frames, okay? So we're going to call the first one normal. So at 6 seconds, which would be like 10 segments in D&D, a 6-second combat round, it can still be in combat, but not when you're being shot at, okay? You're running down the street trying to catch up to someone. You're going to jump off the back of a tank and run the building, or you're going to run up the stairs, or you're going to go prone on the ground because aircraft are coming by. So you haven't been damaged yet, and no one's shooting at you. Because the moment someone starts shooting, we've got to kind of compress the time down so all those shots can actually get off. Because bullets move really fast, and a lot of people are using full automatic burst weapons that shoot in a burst. We're not going to roll to hit for every single bullet when someone shoots an MP40 or a Sten gun, okay? Or someone shooting M1 Garand going bam, 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 semi-automatic. What we want to do is have a situation where we can simulate that and have pretty quick to hit rolls, and then start doing things like where did you get hit and what kind of wound it was based on what's available to be hit. And we'll talk about that in another episode. Because in a war game, these guys are not running around with Kevlar vest, plate mail, chain. There's not going to be any armor class. We're not going to check for penetration values on your clothing to see whether the bullet hit your shovel or hit your belt buckle. What we're going to do is if you get hit, okay, there's going to be what's possible for you to get hit. Like, is it possible for this? Let's put it this way. Let's say this guy here is sniping out this window over here, right? This window over here. Now, say this window only goes up, starts at about 3.5 feet up. So in theory, if this windowsill, only goes up about 3.5 feet, only part of this guy is exposed. So if there was a German over here, and he's this many units away, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 35 feet away, and he's taking a shot at the sniper guy, he can only see half of him, but this guy is completely in the open. He's not concealed at all. But if this guy is actively running towards him, he's becoming a larger target. Whereas if he's moving to the side and trying to break that line of sight, he becomes harder to hit that way. Or if he's just flat out trying to run away. So each condition has an effect on what can and can't be hit. If the German guy was, this German commander was behind this stairs that go down to a little basement behind this half wall, he's just as concealed as him, but he's at a higher ground. So a lot of war games get into a lot of a lot of necessary detail with all those types of situations. And plus they're dealing with things on a large unit, squadron, division, platoon level where one unit is moving past another unit and they have an opportunity to fire and there's a morale break and all this kind of stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to move away from all that and let's just resolve heroic combat between soldiers in World War II. So let's go back to movement. So we have types of movement. We have 7 of them basically. So a prone crawl. Everyone knows what being prone is, right? Prone's when you're laying on the ground. Now I don't have a miniature here of a dude laying on the ground, but let's just say this guy here was laying on the ground, right? So he was laying on the ground because he wanted to avoid being shot by this German guy here. When you're lying on the ground prone, you're trying to minimize how much of a target you are. If you're laying on the ground this way and this guy's shooting at you, you're trying to make yourself a smaller target. If an aircraft's coming by and dropping bombs, you're trying to hit the deck. You don't want any random shrapnel to come by shooting up like this and hit you, right? So you're trying to make yourself a smaller target. You also know that when you do that, you're not going to be moving around very quickly. So if you may dive you may dive behind this wall and go prone. Well, you may dive behind these steps. See these steps here up at this building? Diving prone behind these steps. You ever played Red Orchestra or any other World War II or Call of Duty type game? Going prone, those types of games or battlefields, is really important. So when you go prone by yourself, how fast can you move? Well, in 6 seconds, we're going to give you 10 feet. Now, 10 feet with these 1-inch squares is going to be 2 of them, right? So in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in 6 seconds, you're kind of crawling with your weapon relatively quickly. You're trying to move as fast as possible. So what do we call that? We call that a prone crawl. Lying on the ground, belly down, actively moving as fast as possible, as if to seek better cover, avoid being shot. This movement happens often in open field combat. This is not a slow, methodical crawl to avoid making noise or pass underneath barbed wire like at some training school, Paris Island or anything. This is an immediate and active movement determined to get out of the prone crawling situation as soon as possible. So no one's dropping down to get prone and just hang out there until they've been shot and killed. Okay? So the movement rates are different. Notice they're cut in half. Although, so you have a 6-second round, and then you have a 3-second under fire round. So the distance you can move is basically half. Okay? So now crouch, stealth, and silent movement. Now this is a situation where, let's say, this German guy was in the building here shooting out the window and his buddies are all pinned down behind this. They're all behind the wall. This guy's peeking out the doorway. This guy's back behind this window. He's trying to stand back and get a shot. And this German guy's unloading, suppressing fire on these dudes here. And I've got a guy in the building, okay, in the bedroom, in this living room here, and he knows there's shooting coming out of this room. And this crouched figure here, he wants to crouch and move stealthily. So there's 2 types of things happening. You can crouch and move, right? But you want to do it without making a lot of noise. So you're trying to not make your feet be heard. So you get your knees bent, keeping your head down to avoid being seen, with a methodical and careful approach, paying attention to footfalls, footsteps, and where you place your boot, etc. The character is attempting to not make noise while also keeping their overall silhouette and visible profile minimized. This is all about visibility and sound. It's not about avoiding being hit. Okay, this can occur in a building or an exterior location and uses the same movement rate. So this situation, in a 6-second round, it's 10 feet, the same distance you can do when you're moving prone or crawling, or 5 feet if you're under fire. Now the next one is just a walk. Now I'll walk this guy with the Bren gun here, just walking across the street, say there's no German on the field. He's just going to walk across the street, and in 6 seconds, how far can he move? Well, we think that's about 20 feet in 6 seconds. That's going to be 4 of these, okay? So this is a casual walk. Now, so here's 20 feet right here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times 5 is 20. So he's standing here. After 6 seconds, he can move that far. Let me give you an idea how far that is, okay? If you're at the free throw line of a basketball court and you're shooting a basket, actually it's like this. The rim of the basket, not the basket hanging over, the rim of the basket, you're standing here shooting a free throw, is 15 feet away. So this is 15 feet right here. So imagine you're walking from the free throw line to the basketball goal, and you're carrying a lot of equipment, and you're carrying a machine gun, and a lot of ammunition, and a grenade, and a backpack, and a bedroll, and a mess kit, and all this kind of stuff, and rations, however you want to pronounce it. You're casually moving. So I'm going to give you an extra 5 feet. So you can kind of walk casually from the top of the key to the bottom of the free throw line. I like to use, because that dimension's never changed your whole life in every high school or middle school you've ever been to. So that's a casual walk. Now, if you're under fire and walking casually, which sounds kind of odd, but it could happen. Someone could be dazed. Someone could have a hurt leg, and the dungeon master / game master might say, I'm only going to allow you to move at a walk, even though you all could normally run, but you've got a really bad wound on your kneecaps, so you're just going to move at the walk movement rate. So we're going to include that for under fire. So walk rate, we're going to say 20 feet, and about half of that when you're under fire. It's only 10 feet. Now, when you're walking under fire, that means you are trying not to get hit. So you may be a reason why you're walking, like you're just moving because you're wounded, and that's why you included that in there. Otherwise, it's not like you're walking boldly on the bridge at Arnhem and just hoping the Germans don't see you or shoot you or anything, right? So melee defensive. Now, you heard me probably talk about this when you and I were, in the last episode, we talked about a movement reimagined in D&D. Let's say this German fella is in this room here, and we got a bayonet, and I see him and he sees me. He comes to the door and I see him and he sees me. We're talking about these two guys right here, okay? We're talking about these dudes right here. They are a certain distance apart. They're too far away. Say they both have any ammunition. They both got bayonets or knives or something, or they want to punch each other. They are in what I call melee defensive. Their intent is to see each other and possibly move forward and maybe come forward and get into a brawl and start attacking. The guy with the bayonet might try to jam this guy. The German guy may come close and try to parry it, hit him over the head, or beat him up, or grab him, or grapple him, and tackle him, whatever. So when you're in that type of defensive stance, right? Say you both got knocked down into, say there's a big explosion, right? And you both got knocked into a crater in the middle of the street. And you don't have your gun, and you get up, and the German guy gets up, and he doesn't have his gun, and you see him, and he sees you. The German guy pulls out his knife, and you pull out your pistol, and you're just going to try to pistol whip this guy, and you see each other, and you're both kind of coming closer. So imagine you get into a fist fight with someone that you go to school with or something, right? So in the first few seconds, like boxers do, there's this sizing up kind of distance. That's what this movement is around. So we say that down here, we call it melee defensive. Melee defensive movement happens when the adversaries see one another and are closing to engage in hand-to-hand combat, but are not close enough to actually throw strikes, make grappling attempts, lunge with bayonets. It is often knees bent, highly alerted movement with hips low, eyes intently focused to ensure maximum reaction to opponent's next move or attack. Pretty good description there, right? So that's what we're calling melee defensive. So we're going to give you 30 feet, which is the width of the octagon in the UFC. So you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. This is the size of the octagon. So Jose Aldo and Conor McGregor, that's about how far apart when they started. Now, of course, once the fight gets going, Jose ends up on the ground knocked out in 12 seconds. But this is basically about the size of the octagon in the UFC. Now, if you're a Bellator fan, it's a ring. It doesn't matter to me. All MMA is awesome. So that gives you an idea about how big. When you see this on TV and the camera is kind of, there's a guy standing on the edge of the ring watching Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier fight this past weekend, or Kevin Gastelum and whatever the other dude's name is. This is about how far apart they are when they start the round. So that type of distance is what we're calling melee defensive for the 6-second round. Now, once they actually get under fire, or you could think of in World of Warcraft as in combat, we're going to use a 3-second rule. So let's say he took a big diving attack at him to try to grapple him up against the fence, okay? Now he wants to circle around and move away. 1, 2, 3. So that's basically how far you can move in 3 seconds, which is like a fighter slipping out to the left and resetting the fight to the center of the ring. So that's what kind of rationale we're using for that type of movement, okay? Let's get the octagon out of here because we're going to move away from that type of discussion and go on to the next thing. And we use our German guy here, use this fella here with the Bren gun, okay? So next we have a trot, jog, or double time. Okay, who up here is trotting and jogging? I'd say this guy here, he probably satisfies for a trot or jog. So what do we mean when we say that? Well, every 6 seconds you're moving 30 feet. Every under fire you're moving half that again. So it's really easy. We'll keep it in half. The first number I decided to go with the 6-second segment because I think it makes more sense because you'll already know it from D&D. And then what I can do is classify these two types of rounds. Instead of having phases that are 1 second long like in Top Secret, or something that's 10 to 15 seconds long like in some of the Game Designer Workshop stuff, I think we could use this 6-second segment for kind of like moving around in combat, but when you get under fire and someone starts shooting weapons, we're going to use this 3-second rule. All right, let's go down here. Trot, jog, or double time. Essentially running or moving quickly, but not fast enough to exhaust oneself. Normally used when the character wishes to move great distances and not be out of breath once they arrive. Okay? Impact on endurance depending on duration of distance covered. So what's that distance? All right, we look up at our little chart here, and we see it's 30 and 6 seconds. So if you're just trotting down the road, he's going to start right here. Say this guy comes around the corner. Okay, I'm going to come around the corner and take a glance, and my goal is to run into this building here. So the player wants to run into that building there and join his mates that are in the building. They're saying, come on, Anderson, whatever his name is, right? That's the player announces his goal. So as a DM, I know there's a German guy peeking through this window here. So I'm going to say, okay, go ahead and start doing the movement. So the player says, okay, how far can I move? And I said, well, you can move 30. So you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 30. And I can say, hey, this guy starts opening fire. You hear the sound of the MP40 shooting. The pavement starts going ching, 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 and bullets start hitting everywhere. I may roll to hit. I may try to damage you. I'm going to give you a reaction roll. You can have a reaction roll. You may try to book it into the best of the building, and that's where the next thing comes. You might decide to go into a crouch run. He might try to continue the double time run, or he might do a full out run and change his movement rate. So the moment that happens, you can see now we have to consider the time signature is different. But if the German wasn't here and he was just trotting across the street and maybe there was a tank coming around the corner. I don't have a tank, unfortunately. There's a big tank coming around the corner. He sees the tank. This guy wants to kind of trot and make it to the other building. Oops, sorry, I bumped the camera there. Make it to their building to join his mates. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is 30 feet. The next round, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he runs all the way across the street, might pant for like 5, 6 seconds, and he's done. He's not exhausted. He could go do it again. Now, if you did it for like an hour, you'd be shattered, right? So that's the idea behind the trot, jog, or double time. It's someone with a lot of gear and equipment trying to move pretty rapidly but not kill themselves. They're not all out sprinting. They don't want all the gear slapped around them and hit them in the chest and all that kind of stuff. So that's what that movement rate is. We read a description for it. Essentially running to move quickly but not fast enough to exhaust oneself. I think I read that right, didn't I? Let's go back down to the next one. Crouch run. You play a lot of shooters. Everyone knows what crouch run is. We're using crouch run as the same distance covered as if you're jogging and moving double time or trotting upright. It's the same exact number. So that way, if you're playing the game and you are trotting across the street, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I told you the Germans started shooting at you, you can say, I immediately go to crouch and continue my movement to the rest of the distance because I know I move the same movement rate. So that's an interesting thing to think about. So the player might say, well, I'm going to immediately go to my crouch run. We'll just use this guy with a mini here. That's one thing I want to do with the World War II miniatures is you can make a miniature that has your character in all the different states. So you can say, I want to aim over the edge of the wall. You can use this guy here. Or I want to crouch down. You can have multiple miniatures, especially where the Warlord does it with their little kits and everything. It'll make it a lot easier for you to actually show what position your character is in because that'll make a difference in the combat, which I think will be really neat. Okay? We're getting ahead of ourselves. So he could do the crouch run and continue going and get in the building. So the rate is the same. So under combat, he's going to move 25 feet. When he's out of combat, kind of 50. And last but not least, the full run. So the full run is something you would intermittently do only in emergency if you absolutely had to do it, no matter what. So say you were a sniper and you were creeping around this corner, and you started moving methodically and silently down the street, and this German started shooting at you, and your other buddies are over here behind this car. One of them's looking this way, maybe one of them's down over here, and they guys wave, and you start shooting at you, and maybe he completely misses because it's pretty far. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's like 40 some odd feet away, right? You could measure this and do it accurately. Just say this is 40 feet. He tries to shoot at you through the window. As soon as the moment he starts shooting, I may give you a reaction roll. You may decide just to completely book it. Now, how far can he move? Combat's already engaged. He can move 40. So in 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, he can move that far. And the next 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the next 3 seconds, 1, 2, he's out of sight. Now, if there was no German here shooting at him, or if the German guy was looking this way, looking the wrong way because he thought he heard someone creeping down the stairs, he's thinking about shooting him, and you come walking down the street and you see your buddies and say, watch out, there's a German in the building, he gives you a hand signal, you say, I'm going to go ahead and start booking it. So that's 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a full out run, the full length of a building. Most houses you see in a subdivision are about 45 to 50 feet in width and 80 to 100 to 120 feet long. Most garages in your house, if you've got a 2-car garage, a friend's got a house, your mom and dad got a house, whatever, you got your own house, they have a 20-foot garage with like an 18-foot door on it. So when we're talking about 80 feet, we're talking 4 lengths, okay, of a garage on the interior. Just want to use some real-life examples to give you a sense of what we're talking about. 80 feet's pretty far. All right, you can divide it by 3 to figure out the NFL distance. If it was 90 feet, it'd be 30 yards. That's pretty far, okay? So that's a full-out run. All right, so that's all we wanted to cover in this episode. We just want to give you a sense of what we're thinking about, what we're doing. I'm going to continue to, as I get a section of this game system designed, I will do a documented video that kind of runs through what the thinking was behind it, and then what I may do is post 2 or 3 or 4 of them in a row, and then you can actually comment and tell me your suggestions and tell me what kind of things you think. Because my plan with this really is, besides it just being a fun challenge, is to just maybe release this thing for free. Because I think it's not a huge demand, but I don't want to do something commercial with a bunch of pictures in it and everything. I just want to kind of create something that the D&D player can do for a change of pace every now and then that might also appeal to a war gamer. Okay? So if you got any questions or comments, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you again next time on Classic DM, where we do RPGs, Dungeons & Dragons, module plays, map drawing episodes, and guides, all kinds of stuff. Take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon.